Hi folks, it's Prepper Al here, and I'm going to do an editorial on Theresa May's resignation speech. Let's fire away.
Ever since I first stepped through the door behind me as Prime Minister, I have striven to make the United Kingdom a country that works not just for a privileged few, but for everyone, and to honour the result of the EU referendum. Back in 2016, we gave the British people a choice. Against all predictions, the British people voted to leave the European Union. I feel as certain today as I did 3 years ago that in a democracy, if you give people a choice, you have a duty to implement what they decide. I have done my best to do that.
Right, what you've got to remember though is a lot of people think the Electoral Commission decides on the type of question and who can vote, who and who cannot vote. No, that's decided by the government. I'm going to give you two examples of the government deciding who can and cannot vote. So in the Scottish Independence Referendum 2014, the Westminster government agreed with the Scottish government that anybody over 16 can vote, including British citizens, 16, 17-year-olds and above, and also EU citizens and Commonwealth citizens. The reason behind that is that the UK government hedged the bets, saying EU voters living in Scotland will vote against Scottish independence because Scottish independence might mean that they end up out of the EU and may have to go home. Now, in the 2016 referendum, the same EU citizens were not allowed to vote in the EU referendum because the same government, the Conservatives, knew that the EU citizens would vote to stay within Europe. So the EU referendum was definitely a rigged election. How can one group of people, EU citizens living in the UK, be allowed to vote on a referendum that threatens the complete integrity of the UK, but then the same citizens are not allowed to vote on the European Union? That's called hypocrisy.
I negotiated the terms of our exit and a new relationship with our closest neighbours that protects jobs, our security and our union.
Well, look, she's not negotiated an exit and she's not negotiated a future relationship. What is she talking about? There is no future relationship. That is why the EU have got these deadlines, so they can talk about the next type of relationship. You're talking nonsense, Theresa.
I have done everything I can to convince MPs to back that deal. Sadly, I have not been able to do so. I tried 3 times. I believe it
Interesting, you're allowed 3 votes, but other people are only allowed 1.
was right to persevere, even when the odds against success seemed high. But it is now clear to me that it is in the best interests of the country for a new Prime Minister to lead that effort. So I am today announcing that I will resign as leader of the Conservative and Unionist Party on Friday the 7th of June, so that a success...
The Conservative and Unionist Party. It's interesting when the Conservatives are on the back foot and have pushed the Unionists in Scotland and in Northern Ireland too far. That's when they start emphasising the full title of their party, the Conservative and Unionist Party. Any other time it's just the Conservative Party. This is a psychological, emotional, political form of blackmail to try and rope the Unionists in Scotland and Northern Ireland back into the fold.
Can be chosen. I've agreed with the party chairman and with the chairman of the 1922 committee that the process for electing a new leader should begin in the following week. I have kept Her Majesty the Queen fully informed of my intentions, and I will continue to serve as her Prime Minister until the process has concluded.
You don't really need to. You could just resign and go.
And will always
David Liddington can take over.
Deep regret to me that I have not been able to deliver Brexit. It will be for my successor to seek a way forward that honours the result of the referendum. To succeed, he or she will have to find consensus.
Wait for it. You'll like this.
Such a consensus can only be reached if those on all sides
Wait
of the
for
fence
it.
are willing to compromise.
Whoa!
For many years, the great humanitarian Sir Nicholas Winton, who saved the lives of hundreds of children by arranging their evacuation from Nazi-occupied Czechoslovakia through the Kinder transport, was my constituent in Maidenhead. At another time of political controversy, a few years before his death, he took me to one side at a local event and gave me a piece of advice. He said, "Never forget that compromise is not a dirty word.
Oh my God.
Life depends on compromise."
She could not spell the word compromise. She's only started to compromise over the past few weeks. She's lost a majority in Parliament, her own cabinet, her own party. I don't want nothing to do with her, and now she's compromising when it suits, and she's putting it across there that compromise has been a lifelong and political and career value or a principle. Really? You couldn't spell the word, Theresa?
He was right.
And you are wrong.
We strive to find the compromises we need in our politics, whether to deliver Brexit or to restore...
You would not compromise with Scotland, you would not compromise with the Welsh, Labour, the Liberals, the SNP. You just buried your head in the sand. Arrogant, smug asshole.
...government in Northern Ireland. We must remember what brought us here.
In Northern Ireland? Oh no, now it's paramount that we have a restored government in Northern Ireland. Oh, is that because the unionists aren't supporting you anymore, and so you could throw them back into the political arena where they're going to have to fiercely defend themselves against Sinn Féin? You're talking about the union. You've broke the union, you just don't know it. In fact, I think you do.
Because the referendum was not just a call to leave the EU, but for profound change in our country. A call to make the United Kingdom a country that truly works for everyone.
Well, not the Scots, not the Welsh, not the Irish, not the people of Northern England.
We've completed the work that David Cameron and George Osborne started. The deficit is almost eliminated.
Bullshit.
Our national debt is falling. And we
Nonsense.
are to austerity.
No way.
My focus...
They're completing the work. They've completed universal credit. They're continuing with the bedroom tax. They're continuing with food banks. They're continuing with increased homelessness, rent arrears. They're continuing with police cuts, NHS cuts. That is the work of David Cameron. That is the work of you.
Has been on ensuring that the good jobs of the future will be created in communities across the whole country.
Really?
Not just in London and the South East.
Oh, is this the Northern Powerhouse? That is never going to happen, because that means you have to balance the wealth throughout the country, which means money has to come from the South East. That's not going to happen, because the South East, the south of England, that is where the money is, that's where the Tory votes are, and if you got to take money away from your voters, I don't think so.
Modern industrial strategy. We've helped more people than ever enjoy the security of a job.
Really?
We are building more homes.
Really?
And helping first-time buyers onto the housing ladder, so young people can enjoy the opportunities their parents did.
Private industry is building the homes. Children, people in their 30s are still living with their mum and dad. Job creation. Part-time work, 0 hours contracts, minimum wage. There's jobs on the Find a Job government, that used to be universal match. There's jobs there for 2 hours a week, and they classify that as being employed. They used to push for full employment. Full employment was, I don't know, like 80% of the workforce being in full-time work at 40 hours a week. Now these guys class full-time work as 28 hours. Absolute nonsense. The new jobs are part-time. The new jobs are 0 hours contracts. The new jobs are minimum wage.
And we are protecting the environment, eliminating plastic waste, tackling climate change, and improving air quality.
But you did scrap the whole government discount on the renewable sector to create jobs, to build the solar panels, etc, etc. So job creation, that got scrapped on that sector, and, well, you've scrapped your renewables, but you're fighting the plastic. Oh, that swings and roundabouts, but you could be doing better.
This is what a decent, moderate and patriotic Conservative government on the common ground of British politics can achieve, even as we tackle the biggest peacetime challenge any government has faced. I know that the Conservative Party can renew itself in the years ahead, that we can deliver Brexit and...
Right, a moderate party? Really? One of the most extreme right-wing parties I've ever lived under. You're blaming poor people for being poor. You're blaming everything, all the country's ills, on everybody else except yourself. And wait a minute, I thought yous were a new party. I thought yous renewed yourselves. I thought yous were the new moderate party. I thought David Cameron got rid of the whole Tory nasty party gang. Well, it looks like he and you continue to pull the wool over the country's eyes. You have always been the nasty party. You always will. Yous cannot change. Yous cannot change.
Serve the British people with policies inspired by our values. Security,
values, treating people like shit.
Those values have guided me throughout my career. But the unique...
Your career has been a disaster. A disaster as a Prime Minister. And remember, you were Home Secretary. You created the Windrush scandal. You made the police cuts, the support staff cuts, the cuts to youth work and social work. That was you, Theresa May. That was you.
Is to use this platform to give a voice to the voiceless, to fight the burning injustices that still scar our society. That is why I put
the scars that you created.
At the heart of our NHS long-term plan.
There is no long-term plan.
The postcode lottery for survivors of domestic abuse. It is why the race disparity audit and gender pay reporting are shining a light on inequality. So it has
I'm not trying to sound horrible, folks, but all these things are nonsense. Not so much nonsense, but her priority was Brexit. Everything else was just everything else. She's trying to salvage her career. She's trying to excuse herself. I hope you're forgotten. Oh, we're a family, we're a family.
But a union of people, all of us.
To the Welsh and the Irish and the people in Northern England, do you feel appreciated?
And together we have a great future. Our politics may be under strain.
Under
There is
strain?
so much that is good about this country. So much to be proud of. So much to be optimistic about. I will shortly leave the job that it has been the honour of my life to hold. The second female Prime Minister, but certainly not the last. I do so with no ill will, but with enormous and enduring gratitude.
The feeling is not reciprocated.
To serve the country I love.
Have a day off. Away with you. What a joke. What a joke of a Prime Minister. Absolute joke, folks.
Well, the Prime Minister there clearly...
Talking nonsense.
At the end.
Absolute nonsense. I don't know what else to say. You know, it's just like blaming everybody else again. Backtracking. What an absolute nonsense person. I'm lost for words now. Right. The country I love. You've took your country you love to the dogs. That's what you've done. The only thing you haven't done is put the fucking jag in the paw. Jag in the paw, Theresa. Thank you. You've destroyed the union. You've destroyed the country you love. You know what? Independence for Scotland. Independence for Wales. Independence for Northern Ireland. Independence for the north of England. and independence for any other part of England that wants to go for it. When you've got people like that pulling the wool over all our eyes, you know what? I think we could still all work together. We could still be a union of sorts, but I think the different parts of the UK and the different parts of England, we all have different needs now, and we're holding each other back. We're holding each other back. That's just food for thoughts, folks. Right, I'm Prepper Al. Mind subscribe. Check out my other videos. Leave a few comments on this one. You know, tensions and feelings and emotions are running high. My blood is boiling. Theresa May talking nonsense. You know, pulling the plug on her career. Good. Right, anyway, Prepper Al here. Signing off. Bye bye.